Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So it's time for the third installment of Lessons Learned from The Walking Dead. We are now on Season 7, Episode 6. Yes, if you haven't figured it out yet, spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, you may not want to watch this. Although I don't really give away anything major in this episode because there really isn't a lot going on. I'm not really going to talk a lot about the main plot line. What I'm going to be talking about is more ado with scavenging off the remnants of the old world, or the grid world, which in a grid down situation is obviously not going to be replenishing itself. What's made is going to be made, and everybody's going to be vultures scavenging on that until some communities are going to erect some form of renewable resources. So I'm going to talk about that, but first we got to put this in context for the people who have no idea what The Walking Dead's about. All 10% of you. Basically right now we're in a post-apocalyptic zombie type scenario in this show. It's about 7 years into the show, but I think it's only a few years of actual time have transpired since the outbreak happened. And now what you have, the remaining survivors have conglomerated into these little communities, and these communities are all under the tyrannical rule of this one guy named Negan, who taxes them and extorts them. What he does is he takes a significant amount of their stuff and he makes them go out and scavenge stuff, or makes them produce things like food and stuff like that, and he takes his share. So it's no different than taxation. And actually the word tax is derived from the word labor. To tax is to labor. And that's really what the government does, is they take a significant portion of your labor. It's no different, only in the Walking Dead universe there's no currency anymore. The currency is stuff. So it's the exact same thing. By rule of force, if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. Only with Negan, if you don't pay your taxes, somebody dies. Anyways, as such, two members of the group who actually don't even know about Negan yet. I'm not going to complicate for you, so I'm not even going to go into all of that. But basically, these two members, they're out on a supply run, and they planned on going on an extended supply run. And the reason why it has to be extended is because of this law of diminishing returns with respect to scavenging after a disaster scenario. And what that basically means is that at the start, there's going to probably be a lot of stuff depending on the type of disaster. The only type of disaster where there's going to be a significant amount of stuff to scavenge for a prolonged period of time is one in which there's a very sudden and rapid die-off of a lot of people, such that lots of those places where there is commodities are not picked through instantly. And in terms of people's stockpiles in their private residences, if you're talking about a more drawn out incremental collapse, like a financial collapse or an EMP situation, all of those supplies are going to be exhausted, and the potential for scavenging is going to be diminished within the first 3 months. Easy. Within the first month, most of the low-hanging fruit is going to be picked bone dry. That's hard for people to grasp, because you go into these big box stores, you go into these grocery stores, and you just see this incredible amount of food. But it really isn't as much as you think it is. Basically, it's a just-in-time delivery system. So whatever's there is going to be gone in a few days. And it's normally replenished every few days as is, just so food doesn't spoil, especially the produce and stuff like that. So this whole idea that now they have to go further and further out in order to get less and less and less, to a point in which it's simply not sustainable to live that way anymore. And that's the next phase of The Walking Dead that we're in right now, is we're in the post-scavenging phase. That's what this episode demarcates. It now demarcates the fact that you can only survive now on renewables. So that could be renewable forms of energy, renewable forms of food, of course, possibly even looking into manufacturing. I have a feeling they're going to start finding ways to manufacture bullets pretty soon. I think that's what's next in the plot line. And so they're going to start rebuilding the infrastructure that creates all these commodities now, because everything else has been picked clean. A funny side note is the fact that they're all still driving around in vehicles, and I don't know where they're getting the gasoline for these vehicles, because I highly doubt they've been using fuel stabilizer to stabilize the fuel for all these years. So that gasoline is probably not that good that they're using. So I don't know how it is that they're doing it. Maybe they're, refining oil and making gasoline in secret somewhere, but I highly doubt it. So I think at some point the show is going to have to confront that reality that cars are just not a plausible thing anymore. Even though it's fiction, at some point it's just not going to be realistic for them to keep acting like it's not an issue that they're still driving around in vehicles, even though all the gas is gone. Unless they find something like a gas town, like in Mad Max, where, a community where they manufacture gas and another community manufactures ammunition, something like that. That's probably what's going to happen now, is you're really starting to see the rebuilding of society and the end of the scavenging era. And, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. And so maybe that's how it has to go. Maybe people have to exhaust what remains of the old world before they're really forced to invest their time in these renewable energy sources. There's another community that has been giving Negan livestock that they've been, I won't ruin that, but they've basically been paying him in renewables. So the Hilltop pays in food, like crops. It seems like the kingdom is paying their tribute in the form of livestock. So I'm not sure what Alexandria is going to do, because clearly they can't scavenge anymore. It takes more energy than they're getting back from the process. So I think the lesson to be learned here is that there's this mentality in the preparedness community that says there's going to be a lot of stuff to scavenge. And like I say, the scenarios that are going to make that a possibility are very, very unlikely to ever happen. Chances are it's going to be an incremental, gradual collapse where supplies are gobbled up, as they come, and it's not just going to be a sudden mass die off of people. It's going to be slow, it's going to be cutthroat, and the people who have the ability to replenish, rejuvenate, and defend a community that can have those renewable energy systems are probably going to be the ones who thrive, especially the ones who are doing it beforehand. So the micro preppers, the meso preppers, are at some point going to have to develop their off-grid homesteading skills. And when I say meso and micro, I'm talking about myself, because I don't consider myself a macro prepper yet. I'm still, at the bug out vehicle level of things. And maybe, I have a garden, stuff like that, but I'm not in the Engineer 775 or Southern Prepper 1 where I got the homestead and I have the solar panels on the roof, like the total solar power system. I have a cool solar power system for my vehicle, but that's about it. Nothing that I could live off of. In the long run, that's what you're going to want. I don't think you can go wrong with that. I think there's ways you can do it. The permaculture thing on a small plot of land in an urban environment, although it might be harder to defend. That's the only thing. There was a thing I seen on one of these. I'm not sure if it was Doomsday Preppers or not, but it was like a garden that was disguised, and it was just lots of different trees. This guy just had a big mix of different types of trees and edible plants that didn't look like a garden. It didn't look like your typical garden. So if I find the link, I'll post a link to that here, because I think that could be a useful thing. Personally, I think everybody should have fruit trees in their yard. I mean, there's no reason not to have a few fruit trees in your yard. It's not going to provide a whole lot, but the odd cherry tree here and there can provide you with a bit of calories, if not just something to boost morale with. So the whole scavenging thing, as glorified as it is, it's not practical, especially if you're doing the residential house hopping thing where you're clearing houses, trying to, find stuff. I mean, that's just you're just waiting to get shot doing that. I mean, realistically, if you really think about doing that in your own neighborhood right now, after a collapse or not, after a pandemic, and even then you got to worry about being infected, because then there's probably going to be that threat. So in the most likely plausible scenario that might happen, you're worried about the threat of contamination or contracting some sort of illness. So I just don't see it as a very good possibility. There's always going to be stuff hidden somewhere, like Tara was saying in this episode. She was saying that, there's always something and we will find it, and Heath is being a bit more pessimistic. He's brought the reality that, this is it. This is the end of the line. We cannot live sustainably by scavenging anymore. And like I said before, I'm surprised they only hit this after 3 years, because it's not like they've been growing a lot of food in Alexandria. They've basically been living off of the old world. They got canned food, they've been cooking spaghetti, all this kind of stuff. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. There's probably a lot of other lessons that could be learned from this episode in terms of OPSEC type stuff, but I'm going to leave it at that. If you got anything else from this episode, and please post it below. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.